These are 10 survival hacks that carried ordinary American families through the Great Depression of the 1930s, the worst economic collapse this country has ever seen. Most of them have been completely forgotten, not because they stopped working, but because we got comfortable enough to forget we ever needed them. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a generation that had almost nothing managed to waste almost nothing, and why their playbook is quietly becoming relevant again. I will start at number 10. Number 10, the bone and scrap stock pot. Nothing left a Depression-era kitchen until it had given up everything it had. Chicken bones, ham hocks, vegetable peels, the tough ends of celery, all of it went into a pot of simmering water that lived on the back of the stove for days. What came out was a rich, mineral-heavy broth that turned thin meals into filling ones. The hack wasn't the soup, it was the principle. A single chicken could feed a family 3 or 4 times if you treated the carcass as an ingredient instead of garbage, and here's why it still works today. Bone broth now sells for $6 a cup in grocery stores, and your grandmother made it from what you throw away. Number 9, cardboard and newspaper insulation. When you couldn't afford coal, you stopped heat from leaving the house instead. Families lined their walls with newspaper, stuffed cracks around windows with rags, and slid flattened cardboard under rugs and behind headboards. Kids slept in layers under stacked quilts in rooms that never saw a furnace. It was crude, but it cut heating needs dramatically. The physics haven't changed, which means sealing drafts and adding cheap insulation is still the fastest way to lower a heating bill. We just pay contractors to do what people once did with last week's headlines. Number 8, the mended not replaced rule. A torn shirt was not the end of a shirt, it was the beginning of a patch. Socks were darned, collars were turned, and buttons were salvaged from worn-out clothes and stored in a tin that almost every household had. Children learned to sew before they learned to drive. Clothing moved down through siblings until it physically fell apart, and then it became cleaning rags. The average American now throws away around 80 pounds of textiles a year, and a $10 sewing kit with 20 minutes of patience would reclaim most of it. Number 7, backyard and vacant lot gardens. During the Depression, vegetable gardens weren't a hobby, they were the difference between eating and not eating. People grew potatoes, beans, cabbage, and tomatoes in backyards, window boxes, and even vacant city lots that neighbors quietly farmed together. In areas hit by the Dust Bowl, these small plots were often the only reliable food source when crops failed across entire states. A small plot could meaningfully offset a family's grocery needs through the growing season, and with canning, well past it. A few square feet of dirt still produces real food, and the skills cost nothing but attention. Number 6, canning and preserving the harvest. Growing food was only half the battle, making it last through winter was the other half. Families spent late summer in hot kitchens filling glass jars with tomatoes, pickles, jams, and beans. A well-stocked cellar of home-canned goods was a household's insurance policy against a lean January. Canning extends a bulk purchase or a summer surplus for a year or more, and a properly sealed jar needs no electricity to keep its contents safe. Number 5, the barter and skills economy. When cash dried up, people traded what they had. Eggs for shoe repair, a haircut for a dozen jars of preserves, carpentry for a sack of flour. Entire neighborhoods ran on informal exchange because the dollar was scarce, but skills and goods were not. Knowing how to do something useful made you valuable even when your wallet was empty. Skills are recession-proof currency, and the person who can fix, build, grow, or repair will always have something to trade when money gets tight. Number 4, reusing every container and material. Flower companies figured out that women were sewing flower sack dresses from their bags, so they started printing the sacks in attractive patterns. That's how strong the reuse instinct was. Tin cans became drinking cups and planters, glass jars stored everything, and worn tires became shoe soles. Grease was saved in a can by the stove and reused until it was gone. Nothing was single-use because nothing could afford to be. And the cheapest storage in your house is the container you were about to recycle. Number 3, cooking from scratch with cheap staples. Depression cooking was built on a short list of cheap filling ingredients: flour, beans, potatoes, cornmeal, lard, and whatever was in season. Dishes like bean soup, cornbread, and the famous Hoover stew stretched pennies into meals that kept families fed when bread lines formed in cities across America. Families learned to make bread instead of buying it because a sack of flour cost a fraction of the loaves it produced. Scratch cooking from dry staples is still the lowest cost per calorie way to eat, and it sidesteps the steep markup baked into convenience food. Number 2, communal childcare and shared resources. Survival wasn't a solo act. Neighbors watched each other's children so parents could work or hunt for work. Tools were shared down a whole street, and families doubled up under one roof to split rent and heat. A washing machine, a sewing machine, or a working car often served several households. The hack was simple: pool what's scarce so everyone has access to it. Shared resources and mutual aid still multiply what a single budget can reach. The model just wears modern names now. And number 1, the absolute refusal to waste anything. This is the hack that ties all the others together. The Depression generation didn't have 10 separate tricks. They had one mindset applied 1,000 ways. Every leftover became tomorrow's lunch. Every broken thing was a repair waiting to happen. And every scrap of material had a second life and often a third. Waste wasn't just expensive, it felt almost immoral to people who had watched neighbors go hungry. Long before sustainability was a marketing word, an entire generation lived it out of pure necessity, and they proved that a household running on almost nothing can still hold together. So here's the real lesson behind all 10. The people who survived the Great Depression weren't waiting for anyone to rescue them. They turned scarcity into skill, and they passed that skill down until a few prosperous decades convinced us we'd never need it again. The hacks never stopped working, we just stopped remembering them. If any of these surprised you, that's the point. The knowledge didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because, for a little while, we got lucky enough to forget. The question worth sitting with is simple. How much of it would you be able to do if you had to?